Hello, this is going to be part 2 of the clamshell bucket redesign and rebuild. In part 1 I explained some of the problems and the shortcomings of the design of that clamshell bucket. If you remember, the pin boss plates were thin and not reinforced, and they wanted to bend out, and eventually the whole bucket would pull itself apart. At the time I was planning on reusing the original frame, and I machined it in that video in preparation for welding new thicker pin boss plates and then extending the gussets up to hold them. Well, after I posted the video, I went back and looked at it and realized I had made a bit of a dumb mistake. The original gussets are too far apart, and they're going to interfere with the welding fixture that holds the boss plates in position while it's being welded. It's one of those bad situations you sometimes run into where the gusset is in the wrong spot, but it's not far enough away from the correct spot that you can put a different part in. It's no good and in the way, so it's the worst of both worlds. So about the only solution was to just make a whole new frame. So I decided to do that. I measured up the old one to get the dimensions that I needed off of it, and then I decided to change it a bit and make it heavier and stronger, in keeping with the whole point of this project, which was to strengthen the pin boss plates so they don't bend out. It's probably easiest just to show you the difference. The steel just arrived yesterday, right near the end of the day, and I've sort of set it up here to just to test fit it. Now this is the old frame, and I machined that in the last video. You can see this here. The new frame is here. Now it's not welded together yet. I've just set the pieces in place, and you can see the like when I decided to go with a new frame, essentially the reason was to draw these in a bit closer so that when I hold it with the welding fixture, I can still get a weld in here. But I decided, since I was going to make a whole new frame, I might as well redesign it and make it heavier. So the basic shape is the same. It's got 4 gussets, the 2 outer and 2 inner gussets. But I thickened all of them up. So the old inner gussets were 5/8. The new ones are going to be 3/4. The old outer ones were 3/8, and the new outer ones are 1/2 inch. I also took the opportunity to thicken it up in the middle. This one is about 2 inches, and this one's going to be just about 3. This is where the majority of the bending is on this structure, and it was the thinnest part, so I decided I'd thicken that up. I talked to my customer. The only effect it's going to have is it's going to increase the overall height of the bucket, but they said that's not an issue at all. So the gussets are heavier and the sections are thicker. You can see, the side plates are higher. They're have a deeper section, so they're stronger. And the main thick inner gussets that I was going to try to extend on here, I was going to try and extend them up. It's now one piece, which is nice because it gives me a nice solid structure to weld to. It's a complete piece from one end to the other, so there's no joints in it. It's much stronger. There's no here I was gonna have to weld along here to add a gusset. So those are the main differences between the two frames. Now maybe I should discuss the method of building this frame. I got the parts laser cut. The original, the outer piece here was bent on a brake, and actually we can see that better here. You can see it's a nice joint. And the company that supplied me with the steel for my new frame can also break steel like that, would be no problem. But I don't know what kind of accuracy they get. And I was worried that when we went to fit the gussets to the bent piece of steel, it may not line up properly. So I decided to just do that in 3 pieces. So I have the bottom plate, and then the end plate, and the other end plate's just still on the pallet. But the idea is that this will sit sort of like that, and then it can be welded. The gussets can be welded to the plate, and then the plate will be welded down here to the other plate, and that'll be on each end, obviously. So I will take that to the welder. He'll weld that all up for me, and then when it comes back, I'm assuming that there's going to be some warpage. I'm going to likely have to machine the surface that's touching the red table here, machine that flat to give myself a good flat reference surface. Then I'm going to mount it in my milling machine, and I'll come in with an end mill, and I've allowed extra material here, and I can come in and cut this out and cut this out through here, and do the same with the other side, and make sure that I get this surface, this face, and this face the correct distance apart, which will space the pin bosses. Once those are machined, I then have a nice accurate surface that's square to the bottom, and the distance between the 2 faces is correct. Then I can mount the pin boss plate on there, and then it can be welded into this assembly. So there's a intermediate machining step between weld procedures, which I'm hoping will reduce the amount of distortion. I'll machine away the distortion from the first part of the welding, and then I'll have to just deal with whatever distortion comes from the second part of the welding. I'm hoping the distortion won't be too great. The pin boss is much heavier. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just show the difference. If you look here, this is the old pin boss, and you can see that they'd added some reinforcement to try and keep it from bending, but it didn't really help because the weak spot was up here, and that pin boss was 3/4 of an inch thick. This is the blank for the new pin boss. I'll put it next to the old one. So you can see it's considerably heavier. I ordered it 1 3/4 inches thick. I'm going to machine it down to 1.5 inches. I wanted to have clean faces on each side, and you can never tell when you get flame cut plate what condition it's going to be in. Sometimes it's perfectly flat and smooth. Other times it's been gouged by other pieces of steel, or the mill scale is flaking off, it's rusty. So I just decided to go a bit oversized and machine it so I know I have 2 good surfaces. This step up is an allowance, some extra material that I can machine down to make this flat. And then once that's, and then I'll rough bore out the holes, drill them out before welding. So if we can, that's pretty wobbly. If we can picture that this will be machined out a bit. This isn't the actual location that it'll be when we go to put the pin boss on. It'll be machined back and down. And then this will also be machined here, and the holes will be in it. And it will essentially sit on there. And there'll be one on each end, and then my welding fixtures that I'm building will hold these in place at the correct distance out here, and then we'll weld the gussets, and it'll get welded along the bottom to this plate, to the end plate, and I'm hoping that there'll be not a lot of distortion, because when I'm done, I want to only have to be able to go in and bore these holes to size for the pins to fit in. Once that's welded on, I'll come in and bore those holes, and I'll also put a hole here, a threaded hole that I can put a set screw in, because there's going to be a long pin passes through from boss to boss, and the pin's not going to rotate in this. The bucket is going to rotate around the pin. So I'm going to put a set screw, and I'll dimple the pin with a ball nose end mill for the set screw to fit in. And I'll put one on each side, and I'll be able to lock the pin in from both ends. So it won't rotate and it won't fall out. There won't really be a lot of force trying to make it rotate or to eject it out each end, but that'll just essentially guarantee that it won't. Yeah, that's the overall plan for this. Well, that wraps up the second video in this series of redesigning and rebuilding clamshell bucket. Apologize, I don't have any machining or welding or actual making of stuff in this video, but I thought for those that are maybe interested in what I'm doing, it would be important to sort of explain the changes I've made, how I'm making a new frame, and how I'm going to go about welding that. That's a whole bunch of extra work I hadn't anticipated when I made the first video. What I really need to do is get a whiteboard like Rustanox has, so I can stand there and draw pictures and explain it, which probably make it a lot more clear. From now on, the videos will be of actually machining, welding, and making this, and probably the next one will show making the welding fixtures, and then I'll have some on post-weld machining, and then the second post-weld machining where I bore the holes out, and hopefully eventually at the end I'll have showing the bucket being all fit together and hopefully working. So anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the third video. Bye.